No, sir.
All right, we are on the record in the petition for reinstatement or modification of penalty for the removal of supervision and therapy provisions for Cassandra Pacheco. It is OAH case number 2019-100-907 and agency case number 2002-016-002-022. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this case. Can I invite the board members to identify themselves, starting with the farthest on my right?
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Crystal Anthony, LCSW member.
Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Betty Conley, LEP member.
Max Disposti, public member.
Deborah Brown, public member.
All right, thank you. We've previously determined that these members constitute a quorum. Ms. Pacheco, as I said at the outset, after I take appearances of the parties, I'll have Ms. Crawford present your petition packet to the board and then present a brief overview of your case. At that point, you'll have the opportunity to object to any documents. We'll mark them and rule on those objections and then admit those into evidence. And then we'll go to your presentation of evidence. You'll have the opportunity to testify yourself or present documents or call other witnesses. Any questions about any of that?
No, sir.
All right, Ms. Crawford. Oh, can I take appearances of the parties starting with counsel?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General's Office pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. And Ms. Pacheco, the record should reflect that you were here today without the assistance of counsel. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crawford.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to provide you with a packet. I have provided a copy of this packet to the petitioner as well. And at this time, I would seek to introduce the contents of the packet. They consist of 6 exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the notice of hearing of today's hearing date.
Ms. Pacheco, you have the exhibits in a binder in front of you if you'll follow along. Do you have any objection to the consideration of Exhibit 1 as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 1 is admitted without objection.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification for the petitioner's license.
Ms. Pacheco, any objection to Exhibit 2 being considered as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 2 is admitted without objection.
Exhibit 3 is the petition for modification of penalty and attachments in support.
Ms. Pacheco, any objection to Exhibit 3 being considered as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 3 is admitted without objection.
Exhibit 4 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, along with the amended accusation and statement of issues.
Ms. Pacheco, any objection to Exhibit 4 being considered as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 4 will be admitted without objection.
Exhibits 5 and 6 are requested to be admitted under a protective order. 5 is the counseling and therapy letters from petitioner's counselor.
Ms. Pacheco, any objection to Exhibit 5 being considered as evidence in this case, subject to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No.
Exhibit 5 will be admitted pursuant to that protective order. I've reviewed it and find good cause to sign the protective order for it.
And Exhibit 6 is the psychological evaluation of petitioner.
Ms. Pacheco, any objection to Exhibit 6 being considered as evidence in this case, subject to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No.
I reviewed Exhibit 6 and find good cause to sign the protective order for it. It'll be admitted subject to that protective order. Would you like to present an overview of the case for the board, Ms. Crawford?
Yes, Your Honor. The board issued the petitioner an associate clinical social worker registration from July 23rd to August 1st of 23rd of 2013 to August 1st of 2017, when it expired. The board then issued a licensed clinical social worker license on November 16th of 2017, which will expire May 31st, 2021. The license is on probation for 5 years, terminating October 17th, 2022. The probation is based on an amended accusation filed April 4th of 2017 and a stipulated settlement which became effective November 16th of 2017. The accusation alleged that in 2016, the petitioner was convicted of welfare fraud, a felony. The accusation further alleged a basis for discipline for unprofessional conduct and committing a fraudulent or dishonest act. The basis was that in 2013, while receiving government assistance from the Department of Social Services, the petitioner failed to disclose her employment or her income on an eligibility form and continued to do so for nearly a year before her misconduct was discovered. The probation terms required psychological evaluation, psychotherapy, law and ethics course, supervised practice, cost recovery, and standard terms. Petitioner is seeking modification of her probation and requesting the board remove the probation conditions that require her to have supervised practice and therapeutic counseling. She has been compliant in all other aspects of her probation. As the burden is on the petitioner, I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question the petitioner.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Ms. Pacheco, would you like to testify on your own behalf?
I just wrote a brief statement.
Well, before you do that, I
everyone else
just want
did.
to verify that you want to, in
Oh.
case I'll have to swear you in.
Yes.
Can you stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you very much. All right, now, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this really short and sweet to avoid repeating information that's already in the petition. Yes. Do you want me to start over? Okay. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet to try and avoid repeating information that is already in my petition. I am requesting to remove supervision and therapy requirements from my probationary requirements to be able to dedicate more time to my client's family and self-care, such as camping and painting. I have been compliant with therapy and supervision, and my providers are in support, as well as indication of safe practice on my psych evaluation. Even before being placed on probation, I began to heal from my experiences by reauthoring my narrative as a learning experience that can help me in my practice, as I had always and continue to work with justice system involved clients, so my experiences helped me to develop a deeper empathy.
Is there anything else you wanted to add at this point?
No.
Okay. Do you have any additional documents that you wanted to offer on your own behalf?
I do.
Okay. Can you do that now?
Yes.
Okay. They'll be distributed presently.
Do you want to do the other one now too, or later? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. Ms. Pacheco, is it just the one document that you would like to introduce?
There is a second document that's going to be verbally reported.
Okay. Well, maybe I should be more clear about document. I mean, a physical document that you'd like introduced as an exhibit.
It's not going in right. No, that's the only one.
Okay, we'll mark this as Exhibit A. It's a 2-page order of dismissal in Superior Court case number SS160673A is an alpha. Looks
Your
like
Honor, can I
it's-
ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
For the edification of the board and those of us that are not legal experts, could someone explain what this document is? Because I don't quite understand what it is.
Well, it's the petitioner's document, and so I'll have, if you'd like to ask her a question about it, once the time to question her comes, I'll have her explain the significance of it. And it may be that in closed session, the board may have the opportunity to consult with its own counsel about the significance of it. Yep. Any other documents or testimony you'd like to offer at this point, Ms. Pacheco?
Yes, so I wanted to enter in the the quarterly statements from my supervisor while leaving out the actual client, like summaries. I think they're submitted backwards. No, they're not, are they? Which one? Okay, thank you. So what it says is Cassie has maintained all of her supervision sessions. She presents with a good understanding of clinical assessment and the need for continued assessment.
Let me stop you for just a moment, just so the board understands as you're reading it. Can you tell us what you're reading from? Because
Yes.
it's my understanding you're not going to submit this as a documentary exhibit, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I had submitted my packet, the letters that are attached to the quarterly reports from my clinical supervisor were not in there. And so she's having me read just the part that pertains to my practice.
Okay, so this was an attachment to a quarterly report from your clinical supervisor?
Yes, on January 4th of 2019.
Okay. Before you continue, Ms. Crawford, do you have any objection to Ms. Pacheco reading from this document?
I don't have an object, I'm sorry. She did show me a copy of the document. I don't have an objection to the portion that she's going to read into the record.
Okay, all right. And again, I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure the board understands what they're being read to from.
Of course.
All right.
Do you want me to just start over?
Yes, please.
Okay. Cassie has maintained all of her supervision sessions. She presents with a good understanding of clinical assessment and the need for continual assessment. She is able to establish rapport with her clients in any environment. She is very comfortable with her clients and wants to advocate for them whenever possible. One weakness I have seen in Cassie is how she verbalizes her desire for the cases and the clients to move faster than they are.
Can you go a little bit slower?
Sorry. It is a combination of being impatient and a desire to accomplish a lot in a short time. And then I think. And, do you want me to read the other summary too, from April of 2019?
I think you need to indicate the name.
Oh. This got very confusing. And so, sincerely, Gabriella Dodson, LCSW, Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County. And then, where did that one go? And then the second one is dated April 2nd of 2019. And it says, Cassie is doing well in her placement. She has a baby boy in late January, ! She has been working with the team and communicating in a timely manner. She has a casual way of building rapport with her clients and the staff. I look forward to continuing to work with her. Sincerely, Gabriella Dodson, LCSW, Family Service Agency of Santa Barbara County. And I think. And that's the end.
And Ms. Dodson is your clinical supervisor
Yes.
and signed the quarterly reports that are attached in the petition packet?
They were not attached. I noticed this morning that they were missing.
The quarterly reports or those attachments from which you just read?
Both.
Okay. All right. All right. Any other testimony or documents that you'd like to offer at this point?
No.
Ms. Crawford, any cross-examination?
Yes. In your petition, as part of an explanation as to what brought you before this board, your statement was that you had a conviction for fraud in obtaining aid, that you faxed proof of your employment to the Department of Social Services, but they apparently didn't receive it. Is that your representation of why the accusation was filed in this case? Because of that conviction?
Yes, the supervisory requirements were a result of that conviction.
Okay. And it's also your representation that you had faxed in your proof of employment, but that Social Services apparently did not indicate they ever received it.
Since the case resulted in a conviction, I would rather not discuss the details and just focus on, I made the decision to, accept the plea bargain and face the charges and move forward with my license. And so in terms of the purpose of this, I was convicted of the crime, so I would be considered guilty.
Okay, I want to ask about the basis, which if you were able to be present in the hearing room for previous petitioners, the basis of the accusation is always an issue that the board needs to consider in determining rehabilitation. Otherwise, there is not really a way to consider whether your petition can be granted or denied. So I'm going to continue on with my questions for those reasons. And the question I have is that while your statement to the board said that you had faxed in some paperwork indicating that you were in fact employed, that's inconsistent with the information from the investigation report, which stated that you had several opportunities to express that you were employed and gaining income for 5 months, if not up to a year, but failed to do that. That's an inconsistency that is in the record. It's inconsistent with your statement in your petition, and I'm wondering if you can reconcile those two statements.
Yes, so what they're referring to is my case had transferred from LA County to Monterey County, and it took about 5 months for them to efficiently close it out and reopen it. And so in that meantime, there was I think it's the SAR 7, the semi-annual reporting. And in that one, based on my communications with the supervisor, I believe his name might have been Mark. I can't remember, but it should be in there. I was kind of under the impression to fill it out as if I was still applying because it hadn't transferred over from the previous county, and that was, I guess, inaccurate and a mistake on my part.
It was inaccurate how you filled out the form, is what you're saying?
So what was inaccurate was my understanding of the instructions that I had been given
Okay.
through my verbal conversations with him. So on that form, I did put that I was not working because I was under the understanding that I was supposed to fill it out as if when I had first applied because it hadn't transferred. But again, that was an error. So I was supposed to have put the income on that one as well.
Okay. And another part of that investigation revealed that you did not, for up to 1 year, report income or your employment until, in fact, it was discovered by the Department of Social Services, which would seem to indicate that you had no intention of disclosing your income. Is that accurate?
No. So I was under the impression that they had received the fax, and then after the case, it's going to took about 5 or 6 months to transfer over. I was under the impression it had closed and I was receiving transitional benefits because you're supposed to get food stamps for 6 months after your case closes. And then during that time, they were also giving me $300 a month in cash aid, and they were keeping my $350 in child support. And so I just believed that it was kind of part of, oh, since she's still getting the food stamps and it's an even amount of money, I didn't even register to think that it wasn't closed. And I actually, when they sent me the letter to renew, I called and I questioned them, and I had them close it after about, I believe it was 9 months, which would have really only been like 2 or 3 months over the expected limit.
That incident caused the accusation to be filed, and part of the concern of the board was if there are errors on your part, or intentional or otherwise, in filling out forms in a manner that could be viewed to your benefit, then it could give the board the impression that you are dishonest in disclosing important matters if it would be to your detriment. What can you say to reassure the board that you have been and will continue to be honest and accurate in your representations to them?
So since this incident in my personal life, what I've done is I basically have followed the standard practice of social work. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So I be sure to document any important phone calls, or if there's anything faxed or sent, I make sure to keep the fax cover sheet, as well as anytime I'm given information on how to fill out a form, I make sure to keep a copy of the instructions. For example, I did end up back receiving aid in, I think, 2017. And I actually saved the voicemail in which the worker had told me to check a box that my mom had moved out, so that way they wouldn't have us under the same household because we had separate finances. And so even though that was not the extremely correct way to fill out the form, that's how she was advising me to do it. So I made sure to save that voicemail to prevent any future misclarifications or another incident like this happening.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right, at this point, then let's open it up to questions from the board, starting with Ms. Wong.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for being so patient.
Thank you.
So, maybe just make it very simple and straightforward. So based on your testimony, are you saying that the welfare fraud that you committed, it's not intentional?
While it was not intentional, I understood where they were coming from, and I did not feel like it was enough of a case for me to fight in court. So it was like I was paid. But again, as I explained, because they were keeping the $300 and giving me the $300, and because of the period of time for transitional, it was unintentional, and I did pay all of it back. And actually, my last month of getting aid in a different county, I was overpaid again because they did not communicate the, I guess like one worker was out and she didn't get the information from the other worker. And the minute I was overpaid, I immediately made sure to call them and document again that I was reporting that I was overpaid. And luckily, they were able to close out the case, and that 1 month of overpayment, I was able to pay back. So I think there's oftentimes errors in the system, and I think that unfortunately, I may be more aware of them than the average consumer because of my education and my background. And I think I have some concerns about the lack of accountability for social service errors. And I think that when they had initially requested the overpayment, I had objected to it and tried to appeal it, feeling that felt like it wasn't fair. And I think that part of the conviction was a result of, instead of just agreeing to pay it back, trying to fight it. Again, I felt it was unfair that they were keeping my child support, and having me pay back money. So I ended up actually having to pay back double because they kept the money that they kept from me. And so I think through fighting and trying to appeal all that and almost trying to advocate and make systematic change, I actually dug myself a hole. So while it was not intentional, it happened, and I did acknowledge and admit I was overpaid. I did pay it back, and I've been able to again learn from it and really make sure to document everything. And even just sitting in the courtroom, it helps me to understand where my clients are coming from now, because I've been there and all the uncertainty, and it's not a fun experience. And it really, I think overall, some good came of it. I got to spend more time with my family. I think it's made me a stronger person. And I was convicted. So again, it did happen.
So that help me understand. So your amount that the amount of dollars is $8,086, right? Is that amount, 8,000 something dollars?
I think it ended up being a little bit less than that. I think it ended up being more like 5,000 because
And that's how much money you have to pay back, or was it that money?
So
dollar?
it was they had me pay back the total amount, which included the 6 months of transitional food stamps that I should have gotten anyway. And they had me pay back $300 a month of cash aid while keeping my $300 of child support. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, it really should have only been like 3 months of food stamps. And in my opinion, I shouldn't have had to pay back if I paid it back, they should have paid me back the child support, because it was they keep the child support for giving you the cash aid. But I lost that hearing based on a one sentence that basically just said, if it's an overpayment, we don't pay you back your child support. So I ended up just paying it all back.
So thanks for shedding some light about that dollar amount and your view of what happened. So my other question is that now the accuracy is really important. Mm-hmm. So and you work in what kind of agency that you work for, employment wise?
So I work for a family service agency, but I'm posted in the public defender's office.
Okay, so you don't do you do any billing for counseling service and stuff?
No.
Okay. All right. So now, so sooner or later, you're going to get your license. And, so if there is any chance that you have to do any of the billing service, what are you going to do in order to make sure the accuracy?
So I do think it is important to note that the context was not work related. And while I totally understand that there's a crossover, I worked and I did bill Medi-Cal for about 3.5 years, and my supervisor never had any complaints. I always got everything done on time, and obviously I was an ACSW, so I was under supervision, and there were never any concerns about my accuracy of documents or any type of billing issues. I know that we went through at least 2 audits from when I worked there, and there was never any issues that came back. One of them might have been, I think probably they audited stuff before I worked there. But the second one, again, if there were any discrepancies in my billing, it would have came up in the audits.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to thank you for being here. And I want to, oftentimes, this is only my second day here. So oftentimes, there's people that have come up here and I recognize the struggle of what has happened and the system in and of itself. And I really want to acknowledge your resiliency through that. And as you were talking and as you were speaking, and I heard that you said you worked with justice, system impacted youth, and your struggle and the challenges that you've overcome, there's a connection that you're going to have with those youth that nobody else is going to have unless they've been through it too. And so, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say something to you. It's it's from one of my favorite authors, and he's a criminal justice reform person. You might even know him, Brian Stevenson. But there is strength and power even in understanding brokenness, because embracing our brokenness creates a need and desire for mercy, and perhaps a corresponding need to show mercy. When you experience mercy, you learn things that are hard to learn otherwise. You see things you can't otherwise see. You hear things you can't otherwise hear, and you begin to recognize the humanity that resides in each of us. And you are an example of for your clients of what mercy is, and I feel like you seem to understand and have learned from what system can do to you, and I hope it's built that empathy. So I want to hear a little bit about what you have learned and how that has changed you in a way that is going to be a positive thing for consumers.
So I think the biggest part is to actually really feel not just an empathy, but an understanding of, when they're sitting in the courtroom and, maybe they're anxious about what's going to happen. And sometimes they'll be like, should I apply for a job, or, should I wait because I really don't know what's going to happen? And I'm able to kind of help them be in the moment and help them be like, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's cope with it. Let's, take some deep breathing, maybe let's go take a break outside the courtroom and come back. And let's just do what we can to better our situation in the moment. And, we don't know what's going to happen 6 months down the road. And I think that's kind of the scariest part of being a part of the system, is there is so much unknown, and being able to kind of help them navigate that and really focus on what they can control and not focusing on the things that are out of their control.
And one thing I want to thank you for is acknowledging, just like taking ownership of what occurred and of the accountability of just saying, like, just how you've come and presented yourself. I want to thank you for that. Like, I want you to know that I know that it takes strength to sit in that seat, and so I'm really grateful for that, for you to do that for us. And my other thing I want to ask you is, what has your healing process been like through your rehabilitation and this process?
So I have been going to therapy as a part of the requirements. I think initially it was great because it kind of gave me that little push that I needed, because just with work, and then I have 4 young kids at home, and it's just finding that time. It's very easy if you're not required to kind of push your own needs back, and this kind of forced me to go into therapy and address some of my childhood stuff that I've just kind of pushed back because I've been focused more on meeting basic needs. So it's been a little bit over a year, and I mean, at this point, my therapist and we both kind of feel like I'm at a point where, I'm not perfect, I'm human, I make mistakes, but it would probably be more beneficial to do, more focusing on my family. So for example, if I were to be not required to do therapy here, I could focus on maybe like family therapy with my kids, or focusing some of their own issues, as opposed to having to take that time away from them and put it on me.
And what are some things that you do for coping?
So my 2 are kind of camping, and my therapist actually got me started in painting, although I did recently lose my paint. I try to hide them from the kids, and they're missing now. I just hid them too well. So, but I've done a few drawings or paintings, I guess, and I forgot how much that kind of, even though I'm not good at it, it really kind of helps me to relax. And I don't get very much time to myself because there are a lot in my family, but just even taking that time to just kind of spend an extra 5 or 10 minutes in the shower when you're by yourself, and just kind of deep, breathing, and just kind of take that moment to just be like, oh, today's a new day. Let's just get through our day.
And how would modifying probation help you?
So when I have my therapy appointments, I have to go pick up my kids from school, literally drive by my house, drop them off. There's an adult inside the house, and then go off to my appointment. And they'll ask me, maybe twice a week, oh, Mommy, do you have an appointment today? I don't want you to go to an appointment. Sorry, I talk really fast, I know. Sorry. So they'll ask me, oh, do you have an appointment today? If they have like a scouting event, they'll have to miss that. And so in terms of my own self-care, I think not being mandated to go every week and being able to go more at my own convenience and not having there be a negative consequence if I, were to have to go would, obviously my family is important to me and taking care of them is important too, as well as myself. And then in terms of supervision, so meeting once a week for an hour. Sometimes I have to drive an hour each way to meet with my supervisor, and sometimes we meet in my office. And so that's time that's being taken away from the clients. And there's times where maybe a client has a court date and I cannot be there for them because I have to go to my scheduled supervision. Because obviously the courts aren't going to schedule clients' cases around my supervision, and my supervisor doesn't have the flexibility to schedule other than our kind of set block. And so not being required to have supervision would allow me to dedicate more of, the 40-hour week to client care.
Are you an ASW or LCSW? LCSW, okay. ASW. But you're an LCSW. Okay. I'm
Yes.
just making sure. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So can we just back up to the beginning somewhat, because I am unclear on what actually transpired, just your side of the story. What I'm reading in the documents is that, what I'm reading in the documents is that you were charged with basically not sending in documentation saying that you were working. And so they fined you and just ran you through the legal process for that. But I would like to clarify your side of the story because I'm unclear. So did I hear you say that you faxed it over and no one received it? Is that your testimony? I was just unclear.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep it brief.
You don't have to keep it brief because I'd like to understand.
Okay.
So if it requires you,
So
if it requires you to sort of
Okay.
expound on what you've already shared, please do that.
So I had an open case in LA County and I moved to Monterey County. And so I did an inter-county transfer because I moved maybe maybe like a month and a half before I had my job. So LA County is one of the few counties that doesn't have like the inter-county connective system of social services. And so it took them about 5 months to get the case from LA to Monterey County. And so throughout that time, there was back and forth communications about, how to do it, multiple supervisors, multiple people involved in the case. So when I got my job offer, I faxed it over, and maybe a month or two after, the SAR-7, which is a semi-annual report, came in the mail. Now, my case still had not been open in Monterey County. And so I was consulting with a supervisor who basically, from the way I understood it, he was telling me, fill out the SAR-7 as when you initially applied. Because when it's an inter-county transfer, they are not supposed to update any information until the certification period. So I, at that point, did not know that they had not received my fax. And so I went ahead and I, filled out the SAR-7 inaccurately based on what I had believed were the instructions from the person I was consulting with. Mm-hmm. So after that point, I think it took another month or so before the case got opened. And the back benefits from when I wasn't working came, and then once your case gets closed, you get 6 months of transitional food stamps. So I kept getting my food stamps, and it didn't register anything to me because, again, that individual had never informed me that he never received my fax. And again, that's my error for not keeping track and documenting. I didn't keep the cover sheet. Sure. I didn't document every single phone call. And so when I was looking through the case file and looking at the case, they actually had tried to open it about a year and a half before, And then they closed it, saying, you know what, no, this isn't. And then they reopened it.
Okay.
And so I appealed their decision because I did not feel that I should have to pay back all 9 months. That should only be 3 months. And that I should not have to pay for any of the cash because I was not profiting or making money because they were keeping my child support. So I really was only over, in my opinion, overpaid for 3 months of food stamps. So I went in front of a hearing. I lost the hearing. So, I mean, the legal system is the legal system. If I lost, I'm obligated to pay it all back. And so I did. And by that point, when it went to the criminal case, so much time had gone by. And again, I'm kind of familiar with the system. And I was able to look, and it's not only a case of he said, she said, but it's a case of he said, she said, but she said is a large agency. And I do take ownership that I did fill out that one form inaccurately. And perhaps if I had done it correctly, it wouldn't, it would have triggered something totally different. And so I just went ahead and, took the plea deal where it was 1 year and then it was reduced. And after 2 years, it would be expunged or removed from my record, which is what that document that you were asking about earlier.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you were receiving aid from LA County first, and
Yes.
then went to Monterey County. You had to fill out a form, which was a part of the process, and LA County was transferring your case to Monterey County. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the form needed to be filled out. It was like the Monterey County form, but because the case was still being transferred, it was kind of open in both counties.
Okay.
And so basically, from what I understood, if I had reported my income on that form, they would have stopped trying to transfer it, and all those back benefits from the months that I wasn't working would have disappeared. And so that's where, again, I was under the impression that I was advised by the supervisor I was working with to fill it out like that.
I understand.
And so,
I understand the point. Thank you for the clarification. So were you actually working at the time when you filled out the form and incorrectly filled it out?
yes.
Okay. So can you help the board understand, because I'm assuming the form was clear. I'm wondering, could you help us understand why you filled it out or how you were able to fill it out incorrectly?
Because once that form is filled out, again, there was about 5 months where I wasn't working, where I was not getting any benefits. And all those back benefits, if I had reported on that form that I was working, because it hadn't transferred over, it would have just closed out and it would have disappeared.
Okay, thank you. So the Deputy Attorney General mentioned that even after you completed the form, there was a 5-month period or so where you were able to bring clarification that you were actually working. Is that accurate?
So that's not a simple yes or no. It was about maybe 9 months, but again, the first 6 months you get transitional food stamps, and so I was unaware that they did not know, and then it took me a while, and then I realized, hey, it's been about 9 months, and I called them to report that hey, I'm still getting benefits, what's going on? So I would say there was about a 3-month period that just, when you're busy and you're working, I'm not keeping track of each month. So it was not an intentional lapse of, does that make sense? Like a
It
lapse
sounds
of reporting?
Sounds like your reporting, it was an oversight
Yes.
on your part.
And then once I became aware that I was still getting them and it kind of registered like, hey, this has been a while. That was like the first time that I had gotten aid while working. And again, this time when I started my job, I picked up on it immediately. I was like, hey, it's been 1 day and you paid me. Let's call. Let's see who we talk to. So I was able to learn from that and just always to cover my bases and always just verify everything and not just assume that things are received.
Sure. So if I'm hearing you right, and I'm just doing this just so I am clear and so I can make a decision based on clarity, you were receiving aid in one county, moved to another, maybe based on sort of feedback from a supervisor, incorrectly filled out a form, turned it in, was unaware that you had done anything fraudulent, and did not recognize that you needed to sort of address the inaccuracy of the form because you were still receiving aid until a little further down the line, which may have been 6 to 9 months, at which time you did inform them that you were working and you should not be receiving aid? I mean, would that be an accurate reflection?
Yeah, I got a renewal notice, which they usually send out like a month or two before it's due. And that kind of triggered me to realize, hey, it's been, a little bit more than 6 months. I think where, again, my kind of struggle is I do know more about the system than the average person, or the average, person involved in social services. And so to me, knowing that I was supposed to be getting that 6 months, it didn't even trigger to me that anything would have changed. Whereas if I maybe hadn't been aware of that rule, I may have been like, hey, why am I still getting money and called? So almost in this case, my education was my downfall and not my benefit.
Okay. All right, thank you for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. As you've heard, you've been here all day, and you know that our responsibility, the whole reason that we put people on conditions or probation, is to ensure that they're safe to practice and that consumers are protected. So when we get a case like yours, we clearly are looking at the facts as we know them. So that's what we're looking at today, sitting here 2 years later, essentially 2.5 years later, after you went into the stipulated settlement. So during that 2.5 years that you've had supervised practice and therapy and all of this kind of stuff, have you grown from where you were 2.5 years ago to where you are now?
I would hope so. Again, I would like to think that even being able to, on my own before, going to therapy, really being able to deal with all that stress by rewriting my narrative and finding the good in the situation, I think that that's probably one of the first times. Like, there was a lot of other things going on at that time for me. I was getting a divorce as well from an unhealthy relationship. And so I think from then I've been able to move forward, and I was able to refocus on my kids. I was able to volunteer for about a year before getting employment to give back to the community. And I think I've been able just to really grow in terms of protecting myself, in terms of, really making sure that I'm covering all my bases, that I'm re-clarifying anything, and also just to be able to find the good in other situations. It kind of forced me. I mean, I either had two options, like go down a negative spiral or kind of upgrow from it. And I think since then, it's kind of been mostly uphill. I mean, there's always little dips and, nothing is ever perfect, but being able to just reframe negative things into positive things and to help others also, and be able to kind of reauthor their narratives. It gave me the opportunity to work on some childhood trauma, which I probably wouldn't have had if I wasn't in this situation. I think it's helped me be a stronger advocate for people. I think that there's a lot of my clients have similar kind of system struggles and navigating the system, and it helps me be a stronger practitioner in that sense. It helps me advocate for my children. I had to get IEPs for them, and because of my background and my knowledge and, going through all this, I'm able to just become, stronger and really know, hey, if I know that something is a need that needs to be met, I need to push for it, and I need to really do all my research and really just keep moving forward.
And what about the supervision?
Have I grown from it?
Has that been a
Or-
benefit? Are you gonna, how is that gonna change your practice going forward?
I think that while it's never harmful to have supervision, I think in this context with my clients and my caseload, I would better benefit from peer supervision with so there's a few other social workers in our office, and I think I would grow more with case consulting / supervision with my coworkers / colleagues who work in the same practice, because when you intersect, social work and the law, it's a unique field that not everyone is always aware of the differences and nuances. And so while my supervision has been helpful, if it were to be terminated, I would be able to spend that time case consulting with my coworkers and colleagues instead, which I think would be more helpful to the clients.
And that's a practice of the agency that's done?
We're working towards it. There's only one of us, and now there's two of us. Well, I'm the second of us, so there was a person, and then now I'm the second one, and so that's the hope. But when there's only two social workers for, one in a different public defender's office, we have, pretty high caseloads. And what's been kind of inhibiting that is I do have to block off time for supervision, which I already have that time blocked off. We could kind of work that into our case conferencing instead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions from me, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I have a question about the handout, the
Yes.
handout that you gave,
Yes.
The record should reflect that's Exhibit A.
Exhibit A?
A.
A, okay. Exhibit A. It says that your petition was dismissed, right? The court granted the petition for dismissal?
Yeah, so not that the petition was dismissed, but that my petition to dismiss the charges. So basically an expungement. Sorry. Basically an expungement.
Okay, so what, the crime
Yes.
has been expunged?
Yes.
Okay, that's important. Thank you for that. And my last question is, you submitted for modifications. Why didn't you submit to just get them all removed? Just early termination?
So I think it was you, Miss Betty, who said it was about 2.5 years since I signed. However, the first year I did toll my probation. So it's only been about 1.5 years-ish. So I'm not able to. So this is the first step.
Okay.
So maybe I'll see you guys again.
Okay, so it's your inability to do it, not,
Yes.
okay. All right, thank you. I have no other questions.
Thank you.
Ms. Wong, do you have another question?
Yeah, just follow up. So, when was your period that you told your probation? Do you remember?
I know that it was untold September of, wait, 18? It'll make it a, hold on, let me think for a second. 18, September. Yeah, so it was untold September 1st of 2018, so it would have been from November, whatever date, 16th or 17th of 2017 to, and that was mainly because my children, my 3 oldest, the 2 were not school aged, and so I was waiting until they were in school to kind of do anything. But then I had another baby, so that was kind of, there was no point in really waiting.
So you basically told for about 10 months altogether, or right around?
Yeah, it was about a year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can I just make an actual comment? So that means that technically you've been on probation probably 1 year and 2 or 3 months? Would that be accurate? Is that?
Yeah,
Oh.
I've been practicing, for about 1 year and 3,
Thank you.
yeah.
Prior to your testimony, you had read from the report of, I think it was Ms. Dodson, and I'd just like to ask the board, now that the board has a deeper understanding of the petitioner's testimony, do you folks feel like you need to rehear that? Because you're not going to get a copy of that as an exhibit to review. I'm seeing heads shaking no. Okay, good. Ms. Crawford, do you have any additional cross-examination? Ms. Pacheco, do you have any additional testimony you'd like to offer on your behalf?
Just I'd like to thank you all for your time, and hopefully I see you guys all in 1 year for the next step.
Do you have any additional witnesses to call?
No, sir.
All right. If that's the case, then in a moment, I'm going to ask whether the matter is submitted. And by that, I mean, do you feel satisfied you've had the opportunity to present all evidence and make all argument on your behalf? Ms. Crawford, is the matter submitted? Yes. Ms. Pacheco, is the matter submitted?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the matter is submitted. The case is closed, and we are off the record.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute break. Come back at
No, Your Honor.
Crawford, anything to take up before we go on record? My microphone is on. Thank you. Ms. Crawford, any preliminary matters to take up before we go on the record?
No.
All right, are you ready? All right, we are on the record in the matter of the petition for reinstatement or modification of penalty of Brianne Nicole Smith for early termination of probation. It is OAH case number 2019-100910 and agency case number 2002-016-00906. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this case. I'd like to invite the board members to identify themselves, starting with the furthest on my right.
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Crystal Anthony, LCSW member.
Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Betty Conley, LEP member.
Max Disposti, public member.
Deborah Brown, public member.
All right, thank you. It's been previously established that these members constitute a quorum. Ms. Smith, in a moment, I'm going to have Ms. Crawford present the petition packet. She'll then give a brief overview of the case for the board just to orient them. And when the packet is before you, you'll have the right to object to any documents. If you don't, we'll mark those and admit those into evidence. And then we'll turn to you to determine whether you have any testimony you'd like to offer in this case. You'll have the right to testify. You'll have the right to present documents. You'll have the right to call your own witnesses, keeping in mind that the board has already had the opportunity to review your petition packet, so they don't need you to go into great detail about anything that's already contained within it. And the board is particularly focused on elements of rehabilitation. Any questions about any of that?
No.
All right. Can I take the appearances of the parties, starting with counsel?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General's Office pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. And Ms. Smith, the record should reflect that you are proceeding today without the assistance of counsel. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Crawford, would you like to begin?
Yes, Your Honor, I have a petition packet that I would like to introduce. I have provided a copy to the petitioner as well.
Thank you.
And it consists of 6 exhibits. The first exhibit is the notice of hearing in this case that I would like marked as Exhibit 1 and introduced at this time.
Ms. Smith, do you have any objection to Exhibit 1 being considered as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted without objection.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification.
Ms. Smith, any objection to Exhibit 2 being considered as evidence in this case?
No objection.
Exhibit 2 will be admitted without objection.
3 is the petition for early termination of probation and attachments in support.
Ms. Smith, any objection to Exhibit 3 being considered as evidence in this case?
No.
Exhibit 3 will be admitted without objection.
Exhibit 4 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order with the underlying accusation.
Ms. Smith, any objection to Exhibit 4 being considered as evidence in this case?
No objection.
Exhibit 4 will be admitted without objection.
Exhibits 5 and 6, we are requesting to introduce pursuant to a protective order. Exhibit 5 is the counseling and therapy quarterly reports.
Ms. Smith, any objection to Exhibit 5 being considered as evidence in this case, subject to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No.
I've reviewed Exhibit 5 and find good cause to sign the protective order, and it will be admitted pursuant to that protective order.
And Exhibit 6 is the psychological evaluation.
Ms. Smith, any objection to Exhibit 6 being considered as evidence in this case, subject to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No, I do not.
I've reviewed Exhibit 6 and find good cause to sign the protective order on it, and it will be admitted pursuant to that protective order. Ms. Crawford, would you like to give a brief overview of the case for the board?
Yes. The board issued the petitioner an associate marriage and family therapist registration on October 22nd of 2015. The board issued her a marriage and family therapist license on April 9th of 2018, which expires September 30th of 2021. The accusation was filed on December 14th, 2016, and a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order placed petitioner on 4 years of probation effective August 30th of 2017. The accusation alleged that in 2010 and 2015, the petitioner was convicted of driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.19 and 0.24 respectively. On September 26th of 2016, she was charged with driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.27. Pursuant to the stipulated settlement, the registration was issued, placed on stayed revocation with 4 years probation. While on probation, the petitioner was to engage in psychological evaluation and psychotherapy, a relapse prevention program, abstain from substances and submit to drug testing, and attend education, as well as provide cost recovery. Petitioner is compliant in all aspects of her probation. As the burden is on petitioner, I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, would you like to testify on your own behalf?
Yes, please.
All right, I'll have you stand and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead and have a seat. And you may begin at your convenience.
I am going to be reading a statement. I will do my best to speak slowly and clearly. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present myself to you today. I am humbled and grateful to be here. The criminal behaviors and convictions that led to this disciplinary action against my marriage and family therapy license are the result of 27 years of untreated alcoholism. I am thankful to be able to call myself an alcoholic today. Like a true addict, denial is a big part of my story. I lived in denial for 27 years about who I was, what I did, and how I was feeling. Alcoholism has affected my life since before I was born, as it is a powerful disease of the family system that both sides of my family carry. I learned these truths about myself and my family when it was almost too late, after my addiction nearly destroyed my life and the lives of those around me. It is important for me to come before you today to explain to you my discovery of addiction in my life and my miraculous transformation these past 4 years. Yes, I am here to explain why I am safe to practice with the public. However, my deepest purpose here today is to share my story aloud in hopes that I can help another person out there who is still in the grip of this disease. As a young girl, I was paralyzed with anxiety and emotional overwhelm without ever having learned healthy ways of identifying and expressing my feelings. I was 12 years old when I had my first deliberate sip of alcohol. Alcohol did for me what I could not do for myself. It numbed my emotions, gave me self-confidence, and comforted me when I had no one safe to turn to. After that first drink, I continued to drink for the following 15 years as a means to survive. I did not understand how to form trusting relationships. I never learned how to ask for and accept help, and I did not know how to love and care for myself. Using alcohol enabled me to go through the motions of living without having to address these missing pieces. It helped me be the person I wanted to be as I skated through life as a straight A perfectionist with exceptional people-pleasing skills and award-winning codependency. I refused to face the turmoil brewing underneath my innocent exterior, which consisted of despair, loneliness, self-hatred, and underneath it all, my fear of being found out. I was a high-functioning alcoholic for many years, and I was always able to do the things that society and my family expected me to do because I was afraid of being rejected and abandoned if I didn't. Things like going to school, working a job, and having superficial friends were easy compared to the amount of energy and effort I spent to keep my inner suffering under wraps. I experienced many consequences of my addiction from early on in life. However, my denial ran deep, and being honest with myself about those consequences was more painful than living my life in isolation and seeking comfort in the bottom of a bottle. Consequences like ruined relationships, horrific hangovers, injuries, and incomprehensibly demoralizing actions while drinking were not enough to make me consider abandoning alcohol, the one thing that had always been there for me. I thought I was drawn to the work of therapy because I wanted to help other people. What I know now today is that I really desperately wanted to help myself. In August 2015, I was arrested for my second DUI. At the time, that arrest was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. I was crippled with panic and desperation as I assumed my career as a therapist was over, and my flawless facade began crumbling rapidly. I experienced the ultimate wave of shame and guilt, which consumed any drops of esteem I had left, to the point of considering ending my life. Today, that conviction is my greatest blessing, as it began a cascade of events that gave me a second chance at life. Thank you. My sobriety date is October 13th, 2015. By the grace of my higher power and 12-step recovery, I have been sober and in recovery for the past 4 years. I do not like to say that I am a new person today. Rather, I am the person I was always meant to be. I have worked very hard over the past 4 years in 12-step programs, personal therapy, DUI education and counseling, and a relapse prevention program to uncover and address the underlying causes and conditions of my alcoholism. Working active programs of recovery has helped me to understand my core reasons for seeking relief through alcohol. Alcohol was a tool to help me tolerate my intense fear of abandonment, my unexpressed anger towards my family of origin, my low self-worth and insecurities, and my chronic self-criticism. Alcohol fueled my incessant approval seeking, my victim mentality, my lost sense of personal choice, and my habitual repression of emotions and immense fear of expressing them. Today, I have received much relief from these struggles, and I am becoming more free of them each and every day. I am a non-anonymous member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a sponsor who knows she's my sponsor, whom I meet with weekly and talk to often. I have had an AA sponsor consistently throughout my sobriety, and I have had the honor of being a sponsor myself. I have worked the 12 steps of AA 3 times thus far, each time revealing deeper and more meaningful truths about myself and my disease. I love 12-step meetings, and I attend 2 to 3 meetings a week. Recovery has taught me the importance of service, and I hold service in AA as a cornerstone of my continued sobriety. I have been a sponsorship coordinator and meeting secretary to multiple meetings. Once I completed my criminal probation, I immediately sought clearance to do service in the Hospitals and Institutions Committee, where I have taken 12-step meetings into a women's detox facility in San Jose. And I currently take meetings into the Women's Correctional Facility in Milpitas. These positions of giving the gift of recovery to other women who otherwise wouldn't be able to access community-based meetings has been the most fulfilling work I have ever done. I also currently serve as the phone operator for the AA Central Office of Santa Clara County. Here I have the privilege of speaking with individuals in need and connecting them with recovery resources in our community. In May of this year, I began attending another 12-step program, Adult Children of Alcoholics, or ACA. This program has exponentially increased my understanding of myself and has taken my personal growth and recovery to a much higher level. This program forces me to dig at the roots of addiction and dysfunction in my family of origin, which has been an incredibly painful, scary, yet ultimately liberating experience. My work in ACA confirms to my innermost self that my problem was never alcohol, my problem was me. Lack of self-love was my biggest character defect. My fear of abandonment began as a real threat to my survival when I was an infant without a father, but it continued to manifest because I continued to abandon myself. I am learning how to reparent myself today with self-forgiveness and self-compassion. I don't need to seek approval from others or seek comfort in external things anymore, because today I trust myself to be my own loving parent. I trust myself to be sober, to be responsible, and to be unconditionally there for me. It is typical to not have a formal sponsor in the ACA program. Therefore, I have participated in one ACA 12-step meeting a week and in an intensive weekly step study group for the past 6 months, recently completing all 12 steps in this program as well. Following the steps has helped me address the resentments and fears that I tried to escape through drinking. Though I am not free of fear today, I am able to walk through them with the faith of my higher power and the support of the loving people in my life. And though I still can form resentments towards people, places, and things, I have the tools of the program and the support of my sponsor to help me identify insecurities underlying my resentments and my part in each and every situation. Most importantly for me, 12-step programs have given me the gift of a relationship with a higher power, which I never had prior to getting sober. A faith and commitment to my higher power has undoubtedly been the most important element in my life over the past 4 years. I have learned what aspects of life are in my control and which aren't. I have established a deep belief that every challenge I face is placed in my life for a reason, and that challenges present an opportunity for me to grow, and eventually they will all serve as an asset in my service to other people. My mandated therapist, whom I have seen weekly for the past 2 years, has helped support me by guiding me in deeper introspection about my addiction and recovery, most specifically about my relationships with my family of origin, and how traumas of my childhood influenced my behaviors and beliefs today. She has helped me build healthy self-confidence and communication skills, which have relieved me from the self-loathing, shame, and isolation that underlied my drinking. She has also supported me in navigating my process of disciplinary action with the board, which has helped me strengthen my recovery and coping skills during this time of high stress. I have also continued to see my personal therapist about every 4 to 6 weeks, whom I began seeing in December 2016. Since beginning my mandated therapy, this therapist has specifically helped me with my spiritual development, which is crucial to my recovery and maintained sobriety. Both of my therapists have clinical backgrounds in substance abuse treatment. I am dedicating to living the rest of my life in recovery. The gifts that I have received in the past 4 years are beyond my wildest dreams and have given me a life that I could not have planned better myself. My obsession to drink was lifted years ago, and I live life on life's terms today in a healthy way, even in the face of adversities, setbacks, and times of high stress. Regardless of my probationary status with the board, I will continue to live my life sober with active participation in my 12-step programs and regular self-care activities. My self-care today includes daily exercise, practicing and teaching yoga, maintaining a healthy diet, daily prayer and meditation, journaling, spending time in nature, listening to music, and attending concerts, and spending time with my little sisters and my friends. I will continue to see my personal therapist, whom I began seeing prior to probation. I will continue to seek support from my network of healthy people in my life, including my sponsor, therapist, close friends in recovery, trusted colleagues at work and at my yoga studio, and trusted members of my family. I will continue to utilize clinical consultation at my current place of employment and thereafter for support with any professional challenges and countertransference issues. My experience in recovery has inspired me to carry the message forward, not only in my 12-step programs, but in my professional work as well. I have been expanding my clinical knowledge and skill set in substance use treatment, ego therapy, and somatic experiencing so that I can better help individuals and families affected by substance use. I recently have been given the opportunity to facilitate mindfulness and meditation groups in local rehab facilities in my area. Along with this, my goal is to provide substance use and recovery-focused treatment to individuals and families, both in private practice and in treatment centers. I know today that working deeply and honestly on myself is critical to providing care to other people. I am committed to doing the inner work for the rest of my life because not doing the work is a matter of life and death for me. Today, I know that I am a healthy, responsible, and reliable person who conducts myself with rigorous honesty and integrity in all aspects of my life. I abide by the professional codes and principles of my profession, and I always practice safely with my clients. I believe that my letters of recommendation speak to my personal transformation that I have described to you today, as well as my ability to practice responsibly and safely with the public as a mental health professional at all times. In closing, I want to express my gratitude to the board for granting me the privilege of continuing to do the work that I love, despite my past mistakes and poor judgments. I can honestly say that I am thankful to have gone through this process of disciplinary action with the board, as it has taught me valuable lessons of humility, perseverance, gratitude, and above all, faith. I am hopeful that I will be granted early termination of my probation, and I will ultimately respect the decision the board makes. Thank you for taking time to hear myself and my colleagues who presented today.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smith. Do you have any additional documents that you wanted to offer into evidence?
Yes, I had one.
Okay.
This is the declaration of plea and dismissal for my DUI in June 2010. So basically an expungement for my first DUI. The hearing to expunge my second DUI is December 5th.
Ms. Crawford, I'm marking the exhibit as Exhibit A. Do you have any objection to the admissibility of that exhibit? No, Your Honor. Exhibit A will be admitted without objection. At this point, Ms. Crawford, I would invite you for any cross-examination you might have.
Thank you. The accusation in this case also states that on September 26th of 2016, you were charged with driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.27. What came of that charge? Were you convicted?
Can you repeat the date?
It was September 26th of 2016.
I'm guessing that the charge was for the DUI that I was arrested for in August.
Let me refer you to the page number.
Okay.
So it'll be under Exhibit 4. And it is AGO-063.
Yes. So I was arrested on August 14th, 2015 for a DUI, but they didn't formally charge me until September 29th. Oh, I'm guessing the year might be wrong
Okay.
in this.
Because to your knowledge, you've only been charged with 2 DUIs?
Yes, and arrested for only 2 DUIs.
The record should reflect that the board members were briefly speaking amongst themselves about the apparent typographical error identified by Ms. Smith on page 063 of Exhibit 4.
Okay. So it's your belief that you were charged in September 29th of 2015 for the arrest in August of 2015?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
All right, thank you. I'd like to then invite the board to ask any questions they might have, starting with Ms. Wong.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask you about your relapse prevention plan.
Okay.
So, what's your idea about your relapse prevention plan?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that sobriety and recovery is a way of living for me now. It's not something that's temporary. It's not even something I do. It is my life. Everyone in my life, for the most part, that I have a somewhat close relationship with, knows that I'm sober and in recovery. So definitely just staying involved and committed to both of my 12-step programs is a huge part of my relapse prevention plan. I've been in the rooms long enough now to know what the red flags are and what leads to relapse. So knowing what my signs could be is important. If I were to stop going to meetings or grow distant from my sponsor, for me too, if I were to start maybe doing other things alcoholically or unhealthily, that might be a sign to me that there's something emotionally or mentally not right, and that I may need to be looking at that to protect my sobriety. Aside from 12-step program, I do a lot of other things now that I feel like are very healthy for me spiritually and emotionally and mentally. I believe spiritual malady is why I drank. So making sure that I stay spiritually fit is very important. Being physically active is a big part of that for me. It's how I get connected. I practice yoga regularly. I just recently completed my 200-hour teaching for Bikram yoga, and I've started teaching that, which is a huge blessing. Exercising at the gym also is important. Having healthy relationships today and learning how to rely on other people. I mean, that is huge for me. That is not in my makeup. Naturally.
I'm very glad you brought it up, because when you in your statement, you said that, the denial, the isolation, really is part of your, how you used to cope. So when people come into denial, you know how it goes. It's like nothing happens. And so that's why I think that external, or having a mechanism in place to remind you that you need to tighten yourself up. I think that is an important thing. I'm glad that, it looks like you do have good support system to help you and remind you and to keep an eye on you, right?
Yes.
So, I think a healthy living is very important. So it sounds like to me that your relapse prevention plan is really just to stay healthy.
Yes, and address any stress in a healthy way too. I mean, life shows up, definitely, and I've gone through a lot of other stresses in the past 4 years. So making sure that I do acknowledge the stress and do what I can to manage that healthily too is important.
Okay, good. So just one quick question now. So, you did mention about like your years of using alcohol. And so you said, 15 years of using or 12 years of using? And so now you have 4 years of sobriety, right? And so how would you describe, the stage of, staying on sobriety? Because, at the very beginning, normally people just work really hard, and then started when it comes to maintenance, so how do you describe it?
Yes, I learned very early on that it's not accurate to judge somebody's recovery based on the time they have, but based on what they do. So really watching their feet. I carry around 24-hour sobriety chips with me as a reminder that it's only really one day at a time. So it doesn't really matter what I did yesterday for my sobriety. What matters is like what I'm doing today for recovery. And so that sort of reminder kind of helps take away the stigma of time and like holds me accountable that I have to be all in today and be living in integrity today with my recovery, or else I really don't have anything. There's a lot of people that can go through the motions of sobriety or even recovery, but not really have that, have that connection or commitment. And I feel like I do. It is daunting at times to compare the time that I have to the time that I used or to other people's time being sober. But I try to just remember, at least in my recovery philosophy, that one day at a time is what got me here and it's what's going to keep me here.
And you have your chip in hand, right?
I do.
Did you just pull it up because I asked you that question, or have you been just...
I've been holding it this entire day.
Okay. Hey, just checking. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to make some comments. Because when don't I? Are we surprised? I've been sitting here and I listen to different people when they come up, and I stand in awe of you, because people maybe don't know that 200-hour yoga teacher training is really intense, but it's really self-reflective. And so besides doing the therapy and doing all that additional stuff, I look at you and I stand in awe of you because of all that you've carried, and you shared that through your letter, and I appreciate that. But how gracefully you have begun that recovery, and you've continued to push towards continuing that healing and continuing to get to know yourself. And so it's something to applaud. It's something to say, wow, because you're a true example, I think, of what we want to see. You do the programs and you do them with joy, and you see the benefit of them. And so you should really, more than pat yourself on the back, I'm really proud of you. And I just want to tell you that I said this to somebody yesterday, and I feel like I want to say it to you too. It's you are more than the worst thing you've ever done. And sitting here today, you're a reflection of grace, and I know that you're probably practicing a lot of compassion towards others through your journey and what you've been through. And so I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for being so authentic and being so real with your statement, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. I want to acknowledge, because people may not know this, that doing a dependency support group was not one of the terms that was given to you, and yet you have really taken to that on your own and made good use of this probation to do the work that you needed to do. So I want to publicly acknowledge that effort that you made and how seriously that you've taken your work. So congratulations on that piece.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you what you learned from the December 2018 sleeping medication that you took. If you want to explain as much or as little, but mostly I want to know what you've learned after that.
Yes. I can definitely say that was a one-time incident. And taking that medication, I learned really the importance of rigorous honesty. I mean, it's a principle that I adopted really on in my recovery. And I felt like that was a true testament from the universe, from my higher power, to my ability to uphold that principle. I went and processed that incident with my AA sponsor, and then went and told my mandated therapist and then went and disclosed it to my probation monitor. I cannot live today with that sort of dissonance of knowing a truth but acting in a different way. And so I felt like to be completely transparent with myself and everyone around me, it was important to be rigorously honest. And I knew that in doing that, there might be some consequences, not just, physical consequences, but one of my biggest fears, negative judgment from other people based on my actions. I trust today so deeply that things happen for a reason, and that if I'm only just completely transparent, it will be in my best interest. So I trusted that, and I came forth with that. Additionally, I learned going forward, if I'm ever struggling with any sort of medical issue, such as insomnia, I will seek professional medical advice. I will only take medications that are prescribed to me. And if I'm needing to do so, I will make sure I understand what constitutes as a controlled substance, and that if I ever take something like that, again, if I need to, I would be forthcoming with the board about taking such things.
Okay, so it sounds like at the time you were just aware of struggling with insomnia, and someone probably said, here, let me help you out, this should help, and without thinking, you just said, okay, great, because I need a good night's sleep. And now what you're saying is you've learned, maybe I should go talk to a professional with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the past, that was not something that was an issue for me, or that had been anything that had ever been like an abnormal incident for me to not take something. I don't know. If someone's offering it, that sounds bad, but I think you know what I mean. It did not cross my mind at all at the time until after. And I was just talking to my sponsor about it, and then we were like, wait a minute. This could actually not be a very good situation at all. And so, yes.
It was almost like, I'm struggling with a cold, here's a vitamin C, right? I mean, that was kind of the mentality.
That was the logic. Yes, my mentality at that time.
Okay. And so now you're more conscientious of what you put in your body.
Extremely.
Okay. Thank you. You're on a really strong path, and I'm very impressed with the amount of change you made in really only 4 years. You've really accelerated your process here. It's evident,
Thank you.
not just in what you say, but in your energy and how you carry yourself.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming in. I'll just echo that it's extremely impressive to see the growth and the sort of commitments, and you're keeping the commitments that you've made to maintain your sobriety and your health, and just all the activities that you're involved in to sort of rebuild sort of your life. As you know, wellness and recovery is about sort of not just focusing on not drinking, but it's about creating a life that has meaning and value to you, which you clearly are doing and have done. I will admit that initially I was concerned just about all the activities that you were involved in, especially since you admitted struggling with perfectionism and the exterior presentation and having to have, quote unquote, your life all together. But just listening to you speak, you appear to be very grounded. You have very concrete sort of supports that sort of will help you sort of continue to navigate the difficulties and challenges that come up. So all the things that you're involved in, I'm less concerned that you're doing it to sort of have a stellar sort of presentation, but you're doing it because it genuinely flows out of who you are. So I just want to say congratulations again, and continue to maintain your current path, because it seems it's working very well. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I have no questions, but also want to commend you for the work that you've done and for coming in.
Same here, no question from me, but thank you for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'd like to echo some of the stuff that's been, well, all the stuff that's been said on the board so far. And I think that what really impresses me the most is your humility and your ability to admit what you know and not to second guess what might be. And so for that, I Thank you, and it really, really shows.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Smith, do you have any additional testimony you'd like to offer at this point?
Just thank you. Thank you very much, and for taking time to share your insights with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really full of a lot of love and joy right now. Thank you. That's all.
All right, do any board members have any final questions? Ms. Crawford, any final questions? All right, in that case, in a moment, I'm going to ask whether the matter is submitted, and by that I mean, are you satisfied you've had the opportunity to present all evidence and make all argument on your behalf? Ms. Crawford, is the matter submitted? Yes. Ms. Smith, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
Then the matter is submitted, the case is closed, and we are off the record.
Thank you.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Crawford, anything to address before we go on the record? All right, we'll just wait a moment while the court reporter prepares. All right, we are on the record in the matter of the petition for reinstatement or modification of penalty of Brian Jacob Bass for termination of probation. It is OAH case number 2019-100914 and agency case number 2002-017-000044. My name is Sean Gavin. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to hear this case. Can I invite the board members to identify themselves, starting with the farthest on my right?
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Crystal Anthony, LCSW member.
Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Betty Conley, LEP member.
Max Disposti, public member.
Deborah Brown, public member.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bass, in a moment, I'm going to have Ms. Crawford identify the documents in your petition packet, and you'll have an opportunity to review those and object to them. We'll mark them, and if you have no objections, we'll admit them into evidence. Then I'll have Ms. Crawford present a brief overview of the case to the board just to orient them, and then you'll have an opportunity to testify, call witnesses, or provide documentary evidence, keeping in mind that the board has had the opportunity to review the petition already, so you don't need to go into any in-depth explanation of anything that's already contained within that, and also keeping in mind that the board is particularly interested in any steps toward rehabilitation. Do you have any questions about any of that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Can I take the appearances of the parties, starting with counsel?
Anahita Crawford, Deputy Attorney General, appearing on behalf of the Attorney General's Office pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Bass, the record should reflect that you are proceeding today without the assistance of counsel. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Crawford, would you like to begin?
Yes, Your Honor, I've provided you with a petition packet, and I've also provided the petitioner with a copy. They contain the exhibits that I would like to have marked and introduced at this time. Exhibit 1 is the notice of hearing.
Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 1 being considered as evidence in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1 will be admitted without objection.
Exhibit 2 is the license history certification.
Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 2 being considered as evidence in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted without objection.
Exhibit 3 is a petition for early termination of probation and attachments in support.
Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 3 being considered as evidence in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 3 is admitted without objection.
4 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order with the underlying accusation.
Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 4 being considered as evidence in this case?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 is admitted without objection.
We'd request Exhibits 5 and 6 to be introduced under protective order. Exhibit 5 is the counseling therapy quarterly reports.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 5 be considered as evidence pursuant to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No, Your Honor.
I've reviewed Exhibit 5 and find good cause to sign the protective order on it, and it will be admitted pursuant to that protective order.
And Exhibit 6 is the psychological evaluation.
Mr. Bass, any objection to Exhibit 6 being considered as evidence in this case, subject to the protective order identified by Ms. Crawford?
No, Your Honor.
I reviewed Exhibit 6 and find good cause to sign the protective order on it, and it will be admitted pursuant to that protective order. Ms. Crawford, would you like to give a brief overview for the board?
Yes, Your Honor. On October 1st, 2012, the petitioner was issued an Associate Clinical Social Worker registration, and on August 17th, 2017, he was issued a Licensed Clinical Social Worker license, which will expire on March 21st, 2021. The accusation and statement of issues filed on April 5th, 2017, alleged a conviction on August 12, 2016, for driving under the influence with a blood alcohol level of 0.14 and brandishing a weapon charge, which was dismissed. The basis of the accusation was that while driving a motor vehicle while intoxicated, the petitioner brandished a knife at an off-duty police officer who was riding his bike and had told petitioner to slow down. The petitioner is compliant with all of his conditions of probation. And his conditions included psychological evaluation, counseling, cost recovery, and compliance with the standard terms of conditions, a law and ethics course, abstaining from controlled substances, and submitting to random drug testing, remedial education, and a dependency support program. I have no further statements, but would reserve the right to question the petitioner as he bears the burden.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bass, now is the time for you to testify or present documents on your own behalf. Do you wish to testify?
Yes, sir.
All right, if that's the case, I'll have you stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you'll give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. You can be seated and begin at your convenience.
Thank you. I'm quite nervous, so I apologize for that if I talk a little fast.
Please don't.
All right. I'll try not to. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm grateful for this opportunity to convey my deepest apologies for my inappropriate and unsafe behavior, which occurred on the evening of June 30th and went into July 1st, 2016, as well as the important and necessary steps toward rehabilitation I have made following the time of my arrest. My name is Brian Bass. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked at San Diego Center for Children for almost 5 years as a residential therapist. I'm proud of the work that I do at San Diego Center for Children, which includes intensive individual, family, and group therapy. At the center, I'm honored to be able to provide competent, trauma-informed, evidence-based therapy to my clients and their families. At San Diego Center for Children, which is a nonprofit, we serve vulnerable populations such as children with histories of complex trauma, military families, severe mental illness, autism, low income, and foster youth. My training and experience includes manualized training in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and years of working with active duty and veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. My work prior to child and adolescent treatment includes over 2 years working in an inpatient psychiatric unit and providing individual counseling at the Naval Consolidated Brig at MCAS Miramar, which is a military prison. I'm here today to respectfully request termination of probation, as I feel I have worked very hard for over 3 years in seeking and responding well to treatment, and I have complied with all terms of probation without violation. On October 17th, 2019, the Honorable Judge Lisa Rodriguez, representing the Superior Court of San Diego, granted both termination and expungement of my criminal probation, as she felt I had met the burden of proof of rehabilitation due to complying with all terms of probation and seeking out therapy and other forms of treatment for over 3 years. I'd like to add the actual order from the judge. I brought copies of that.
All right, that document will be distributed presently. We'll mark it as Respondent's Exhibit A.
An additional reason why I'm asking or seeking termination is my employer is urgently in need of additional qualified therapists to provide supervision to associate level therapists. And it may be the board's policy too, but at least at the center, they don't allow therapists to provide supervision if they're on probation. At the center, we only have one LCSW providing group and individual supervision for many therapists. If termination is granted, my employer would like for me to step in and help with the supervision process as well. Being off probation would definitively help my agency, as I would be able to utilize my training and experience to provide competent supervision to associate level therapists working towards licensure. On the evening of June 30th, 2016, I was at the Gossip Grill bar in Hillcrest, San Diego, California. I had 4 beers at the bar shortly before midnight and then made the mistake of driving after I had been drinking. I drove towards the nearby North Park neighborhood. Sorry, my apologies. I drove towards the nearby North Park neighborhood to grab a meal at the Jack in the Box on 30th Street and Upis Street, as I had not had anything to eat. While driving on Upis Street, a man on a bicycle yelled at me to slow down. Inebriated and not thinking clearly, I raised a knife that I kept in my car and yelled back, "Why do you want to F with me?" I had kept a knife in the pocket of my door of my car for self-protection when going out at night. Regretfully, I now understand that having such an object in a car, let alone showing it, is a poor decision, a poor choice, and it's a dangerous choice. I had never had the intention of hurting the man. In my inebriated state, it was a threat. I drove away and parked my car down the street. Once parked, I began walking to the Jack in the Box. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the same man with the phone in his hand. I believe the disagreement was over. I asked him, "We're cool, right?" He then grabbed me by my sweatshirt and forced me to the ground. He stated the police were on their way. At this point, the police arrived and handcuffed me. At the time of my arrest, I did not have a knife on me. It was in the car. When I was arrested, I evoked my Miranda rights, remaining silent, refusing to answer any of the questions. Upon arrival to the police station, the officer asked me if I was willing to submit to a blood test. I mistakenly thought that was also part of my Miranda rights, in which I stated not without my lawyer present. That decision in turn resulted in the officers deeming me to have refused the breathalyzer and blood draw. The officers obtained a search warrant and drew a blood sample, which registered .14 blood alcohol content. Upon immediate release from jail, I knew that immediately I needed to seek treatment, as I needed to address the underlying issues that led to my inappropriate and unsafe behavior. I stopped drinking immediately, started going to self-help meetings 2 times per week, and on July 19th, 2016, I began psychotherapy with Dr. Sven Schild. Additionally, I enrolled in a 3-month DUI program at San Diego State University. In weekly psychotherapy with Dr. Schild, I've been able to process the events leading up to my arrest, including negative thought patterns, feelings of low self-worth, and how to make better, more healthy life decisions. Dr. Schild is an EMDR specialist, and I've been fortunate to have been through extensive EMDR as well as ACT, A-C-T, and mindfulness therapy with Dr. Schild. I also see a psychiatrist, Dr. Randy Hicks, and I've been steadily managing my depression with a low dose of Celexa. I've been happily sober for over 3 years. Excuse me. With the assistance from 12-step and self-help meetings 2 times per week, weekly psychotherapy, psychiatry consultation, and loving support from friends and family. I work out with a physical trainer 2 times per week. I try to eat a vegan diet, and I'm firmly committed to a healthy, sober lifestyle with my girlfriend. I would again like to thank everyone here for allowing me to speak before you today. As at this time, I'm open to any questions or feedback.
Thank you for that. Just going to take a minute and do some spellings for the court reporter.
Sure.
Give you a chance to collect yourself. Sven, S-V-E-N, Schild, S-C-H-I-L-D. There was also reference to EMDR as an acronym. Dr. Hicks is H-I-C-K-S. And then a medication was called Celexa. It's C-E-L-E-X-A. Mr. Bass, are you ready for cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Crawford, would you like to do any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. What is your sobriety date?
July 2nd, 2016.
What is the significance of that date?
The day I stopped drinking.
In relation to other events in your life that were going on around that time, why is it that that's the date you stopped drinking?
I was arrested the night before, and I knew that the identifying reason, one of the large reasons of that occurring was my drinking pattern, and it absolutely needed to stop.
And outside of your professional providers, who do you have as a support group to help you maintain your sobriety?
Yeah, I'm grateful to have a large support network, and that is sort of a system that I've developed that really works for me. So you were asking outside of professional providers, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, so that would be 12-step meetings. I also go, I'm totally blanking on the name, and I apologize. But I go to self-help meetings, and it will come to me. I'm sorry, I'm just super nervous. But I also work out with a personal trainer twice a week, and that's a really important component of my recovery. She's very tough on me in a good way, and it's a weekly routine that I have to maintain. I also seek support at work with other colleagues. We have a clinical meeting every week, which is essentially like consultation, and people do ask and inquire about where I'm at and how things are going with the probation process. Smart Recovery, sorry, that wasn't the name of the program.
And what about any friends or family?
Absolutely. So part of the issue that led to my behavior was that I was isolating, and the last several years I've really sort of had the mindset that I can't do anything alone, that I need to reach out to people to be of service when I'm in meetings, and also to reach out to friends, to colleagues. I didn't do that before as much, and now it's just a way of living. It's a habit. I make calls to people in the program regularly, to my sponsor. I call my friends regularly. My relationship with my family is actually greatly improved. It was never necessarily bad, just my own thoughts and perceptions of my relationship with my family was not great. And my relationship with my parents in particular has significantly improved, which I had no thought, thinking that that would change at any point in my life. So that has changed significantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, looking at your psychological evaluation, which was,
Ms. Crawford,
yes,
are you going to read from the evaluation?
yes.
Okay, then we need to go into a closed session. Or we need to at least to clear the room and turn off the camera.
I didn't realize there were people here that,
Well, it's
oh,
So let's do this. Are you making a motion to clear the room?
I am making that motion.
All right, motion is granted. Let's go off the record while we take care of doing that. We're off the record. Motion is granted. Stretch away. Yeah.
That's all right. It's all right.
I forgot about the clouds. Yeah. But I don't see. I know. I looked back, I was like, there's nobody here. There we are. Oh my
We're on record, Granny.
We're ready.
We're on record, Granny. Okay.
He's cute.
Okay, I'm going to use my gavel again. Okay. Come to order. All right, we're back on the record. Ms. Crawford, did you have any additional questions to ask of this witness?
I don't.
Did any board members have any additional questions to ask?
Can you turn your microphone?
Thank you. Ms. Crawford, do you have any additional questions to ask of this witness?
I do not.
Do any board members have any additional questions to ask of this witness?
You want to say something first, or?
Should we just start?
Okay, I'll start. So it might be, a question relevant or not relevant anymore, but I'm going to still ask it anyway. And so when you were giving your personal testimony,
Yes.
so when you were talking about that 3 years
Yeah.
of sobriety, and
Yes.
all the work that you have to, you really started to choke up.
Yeah.
So I just want to dig a little deeper, what really, inspired those tears that you
Sure.
tried to hold up and.
It's been a long process and a lot of hard work, and I think acknowledging that hard work kind of all comes in. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
What's the hard part? I mean, I know that it's hard work, a lot of
Yeah.
the task,
Yeah.
but emotionally, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's at times it's been a challenge to be vulnerable because that was not how I operated prior to that, and it's still a challenge at times. But I'm able to do that now. I don't feel weak or something by being vulnerable. I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with letting people know what's going on with me, and that does bring up emotions for me. It's a mix of emotions. It's both joy and sorrow, maybe. The other board member mentioned grace, and I feel like that's how I try to live my life. at this point. And I'm not particularly religious per se, but I am very spiritual. And I do like a lot of religions. I do go to a church, to mass sometimes, and I meditate, and pray, and I do recite some prayers and those kinds of things, and that's how I try to live my life. Not like I'm a monk or anything, but just try to be grateful and to ask for mercy daily. So maybe that's part of the emotion, and hopefully that answers your question.
No, you did.
Yeah.
So being, having, this forum to acknowledge,
Yes.
right?
I'm not always like this, but in having this forum does bring up a lot of emotions. When I had my criminal probation hearing in San Diego, I was also quite emotional. I did go into tears after the hearing was over because it was the first time that the judge had acknowledged everything that I'd done.
So this is a very important thing for you,
Huge.
is to recognize,
Yes.
for you to be, for two sides, for the other to see the
Yes.
accomplishment you have made, and also for you yourself to acknowledge and
Yes.
to even take the courage to put it out there.
That's a huge point, and I don't think that ever was crystallized until you had mentioned that. But I think that maybe a large reason why I'm here is to sort of bring, I don't want to even say closure, but just to acknowledge what has been going on, because a lot of it is done in sort of privacy. You're in therapy, you're in an anonymous meeting, you do talk to people about it, but it's different when you're out in the open being like, this is what I've been doing. And when I talk to other professionals about this, they can't totally wrap their head around it. For how long? For what? What do you do? And I'm saying, this is the path that I have to do. I have no other option, and this is what I will do.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's very wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm going to change direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did talk about, the pattern of drinking,
Yes.
which really was the reason,
Yeah.
why what caused you
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
on probation.
Yes.
And so you did talk about you and your therapist work on,
Yes.
the pattern of drinking.
Yes.
So what is the pattern of your drinking or your old drinking pattern?
You mean prior?
Prior,
Yeah.
we've been
Zero
sobriety for
now,
3 years,
but,
I know that.
Prior to,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I know it's friendly, but in order to protect the record, we do need to speak just one at a time.
oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Sorry, we got excited.
Not to worry.
Prior to being arrested, my use with alcohol was intermittent. However, when I would drink, there were consequences: getting sick, blacking out. So I didn't necessarily drink that frequently, but there were times where the drinking just doesn't work. It didn't work for me. It never really worked. I can't drink the same way someone else could drink. And I would use alcohol in a social situation to feel maybe more relaxed, to try to connect, because I wasn't doing that any other way, as much, because I had talked about being isolated. And so if I, drink in a social situation, well, maybe people will like me more, people will understand me better. I know now that those are, negative thought patterns, and I don't need to live like that, but that's kind of how the drinking went. The drinking started in a problematic way in college. I went to an art school. I studied film, and I wanted to be like everyone else, and it just never worked for me.
So you're a binge drinker
Yeah.
and a social drinker.
Correct, I guess so. I mean, I would say that they were together at the same time.
Yeah,
but I
binge,
would-
binge
yeah,
social drinking.
binge social drinking, correct.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so, so that's, can be very problematic
Of course,
because
yes.
binge drinking, it can just come up anytime.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you assure us
Yeah.
that you won't be doing binge drinking? Because
Yeah.
especially, it can be so unpredictable.
Yeah, I'm firmly committed to staying sober. Additionally, I have gained too much to want to go back to that. There's not a lot of, there's nothing that I see in value in it. It's been a long time, at least in my life, in terms of it having some level of interest for me. I've been out in a lot of social situations since the time of arrest, and I don't feel affected to want to drink. If I'm at a sports game or I'm out to dinner, it's not something that is attractive to me because of so much that I've lost, plus how much I've gained from not drinking. Additionally, I have so many other things going on in my life that it's not something that I want to engage in. I have also a pretty strict workout regimen and diet that is completely at odds with drinking alcohol. And I thoroughly continue to partake in all those positive activities. And then just additionally, the social supports with 12-step programming, sponsor, therapy. I have a lot of watchdogs over me that I like. I don't have a problem with it. It's just that in terms of being with the board, I think at this time, I'd ideally like to end that portion of it. But I still want to have therapy and all those types of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very
You're welcome.
much.
Thank you.
So really quickly,
Okay.
for the record,
Yes.
one of my colleagues, and then I'll say I just noticed that we went to the same school and we went around similar times, but we don't have I don't have personal knowledge of you,
Yes.
and I would be able to be objective. Is that how I say it? Okay. I'm like,
You did it.
I need that too. The best. So I have a question. So I acknowledge all the wonderful things that you've done. And today I can see that with how you've presented yourself and all the things that you've shared.
Yes.
I want to know a little bit about what EMDR therapy treatment,
Yeah.
how you grew in that, and how long you've been doing that treatment for.
So I've been doing EMDR therapy for over 3 years now. I couldn't tell you the number of sessions. It's a lot. EMDR is one of probably the big gifts that I've gotten through having this happen to me. I've always known about it in a sort of clinical research kind of way, but I never did it myself. And it's been amazing. I love it. I find it so useful for all periods in a person's life, which I didn't know about that prior to doing EMDR. I only thought it was, you got trauma, so you do EMDR. And that's all I knew. But working with the psychologist, we've gone all the way back to very early memories, all the way to preparing for this meeting through using EMDR. And it's amazing. I mean, I love it. The other thing that I would say, I also used it to prepare for the licensing exam, which was really effective, and I highly recommend it. The thing I would say about EMDR is that when this is completed, whenever that is, I do plan to get trained in it and go the full certification. I highly believe in evidence-based practice, and I am sometimes skeptical of certain evidence-based practices, but I definitely believe in EMDR, and I think it's highly effective for a variety of populations, including myself. And I can speak more to it if you like, but
I love it. A good answer.
Yeah.
And then you spoke about mindfulness.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. That is much more of a work in progress. EMDR, I feel very comfortable with. Mindfulness is a daily practice that I still need to improve upon, to be grounded, to be centered. As you can see, I'm quite nervous here. I feel like if I was really good at mindfulness, I could just be totally great. But so that includes meditation. That does include grounding techniques, deep breathing. The cool thing about, sorry to jump back to EMDR, but there is a sort of mindfulness component to it, which also I've learned through this really incredible psychologist that I've been seeing. So those are some of the aspects that I use to it. There's also a program through UCSD that I have been using some of the links on the website to use, and then also Headspace as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then I would say, you said you're not really religious. So
No.
how has 12 steps gone for you?
They say take what you like and leave the rest. But they don't really it's not specific to one dogma that I see it. I do believe in God, and I believe that that is the most important part of the way I see faith and the way I communicate and relate to people.
Okay, well, that's all I have, all the questions I have, but I did want to say, like I've said you've been here all day,
Yeah.
but the growth can be seen, and I want you to know that I'm acknowledging how far you've come, and I'm glad that you've given yourself grace for the challenges that you've had in your past, because the work you've done is exemplary of the fact that you've acknowledged what has happened and the mistake that you made. And so you are also not the worst thing that you've ever done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hi.
Hi.
I guess I'll start by echoing that. And the way that I really see your growth is your ability to be vulnerable. That's a huge change and difficult because of gender and because of race and other things. So
Yes.
that's positive. I see that as being really positive. And then the other piece I noticed is you kept using reliable and trustworthy person. So I'm just noticing a conversation that you have in your head that we might not view you as reliable and trustworthy.
I see.
And to make clear, the process is about ongoing safety to practice. Like, can we say everything is free in the future? So I guess what I want to make clear is that you are, I see, a reliable and trustworthy person. And whether your probation is eliminated or not, that doesn't change me seeing that. Because you are working hard and doing all the right things. And patterns of binge drinking is tricky, right? Because it's not like an ongoing, I got to have a drink right now.
Correct.
It's like a lapse in a moment 10 years from now and thinking, I don't have a problem with alcohol anymore, right?
Understood.
So one of the things that I was thinking about that's related to that then, you had mentioned that part of your drinking was to ease you when you're in social situations. I'm wondering what you do with your anxiety now when you're feeling anxious in social situations.
Yes, that's something that I've been working pretty since the beginning with the therapist on, and a lot of that goes back to EMDR and grounding myself and allowing myself to feel things and letting them pass. And we have continued to do that over and over again in therapy. And now I have a system, a cognitive system in my head that I can use at any point to calm myself down and to be present, to be focused. So I would say that's a big one, and that's connected to mindfulness. The other thing, though, is that sort of amazingly, the social anxiety is not as much there. I feel a bit more confident in myself when I'm communicating to other people, so I'm not as worried about how that goes. I think that, again, that's with a lot of work through therapy in particular.
Okay. So it seems like you're aware of when you're anxious and you have the ability to acknowledge it and not let it spiral, but just to sit with it and be with it at maybe lower doses than before.
Yes. And what I've learned through therapy is that not necessarily that it has to go away, but that I'm willing to feel it and work with it and just acknowledge it. And that's been highly effective for me.
Yeah, because some of us have a biological predisposition toward being anxious, so.
Yeah, and I do. So.
Yeah, so that helps me to understand with you making peace with it.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to CBT it away, which doesn't, you can't away it. You can just manage it, right?
I agree. CBT can be helpful, but for these kinds of things, it's been much more about the grounding and just letting it happen in the moment and not trying to change it,
Yeah.
just accepting it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Just want to acknowledge the growth and the path that you're on, so I really appreciate all that you've shared today, and thank you for your time. I do have one, I'd like you to clarify something if you could. So back in January of this year and in March, you had positive confirmations
Correct.
on your tests.
Correct.
And I read them, and so without going into too much detail about personal medical procedures, could you just help us understand what happened and how that was resolved?
Yeah, I think the first one was a urgent care visit. It was an issue that was quite painful, and they prescribed a medication that I took for a short period of time. It was not a refilled medication, but it was ordered by a physician. So that tested on the urine.
Was there documentation that confirmed, because I didn't see any here, that's why I was asking. I didn't see anything
Yeah.
that said, we confirmed that this would cause a false positive, and so this is clear. I mean,
Yeah, I believe I submitted that into the record. I saw it on my,
no, I did see the documents of the procedure and the medications.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I just didn't know that was confirmation that it was cleared and.
whatever was on there, they have been cleared by Amanda Cantrell.
Okay.
I can honestly attest to that.
Okay. And the second one too, the one in March?
Yeah, so I had LASIK eye surgery, and they give some type of benzodiazepine, and
Okay.
that's why.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming,
Hey.
and thanks for all the work that you've been doing.
Sure.
Again, just really quickly, because I think my colleagues have articulated almost everything that can be asked.
Sure.
But just to clarify, are you in social situations now with alcohol?
I am. It's not like I'm going to a party and hanging out or going to the bar specifically to hang out with people. But as a grown adult in professional settings as well, there is alcohol, and I can't control that. It doesn't bother me. I don't feel triggered by it. But there are times where people have alcohol around.
So you've developed strategies for that? Or
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't really think about it that
As
much.
strategies.
Yeah, I mean, they're there, but it's just how my life is, And again, I have a diet that is totally contradictory to even having alcohol, and I do run quite a bit, and so it's just not of interest to me. But yeah, no, there's times where people are drinking alcohol, as in social situations. If we go out to dinner, someone might order a glass of wine or whatever. But it doesn't affect me in a way that I feel triggered.
Okay. And in terms of probation, that's kind of like a security blanket, because you're not going to mess up probation. You're being tested.
Sure.
Is taking away that security blanket in any way going to change that?
No, I don't intend to drink or have any alcohol. I'm going to continue psychotherapy and going to 12-step meetings. My employer, from the very beginning, knows about my situation. They know that I've been sober. If they knew that anything would change, they'd probably fire me. So.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for
yeah,
coming in.
Yeah, and I don't want to get fired, so.
Russ, thank you so much for being so patient. I just echo the sentiment of my colleagues, so I don't have any further questions, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Again, thank you for waiting. You're the last one. And so that's this. We started at 8:30 on time this morning. It's just been a long day. I echo the same sentiments from the rest of the board members. Thank you for being here. And just as I said as the last one, it's important to me to see humility, and I see that, and it's real. And so I thank you for that. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
All right, Mr. Bass, do you have any additional testimony you would like to offer on your own behalf?
Just one last thing. In regards to a discussion regarding the psychological evaluation, when presiding over this, or whatever the official term is, when they have a closed session, just to take in consideration the weight of that versus the other evidence that has been discussed today. And that's all. And then I very much grateful for the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right. Ms. Crawford, any additional questions?
No, Your Honor, but I did want to note, in case the petitioner wants the protective order to also include the. Can you adjust your mic? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I wanted to note that the petitioner, in his petition, submitted some medical records, and perhaps he may want that subjected to the protective order as well. I noted it's AGO 28 through 30 and 34 through 36.
Are those part of Exhibit 3?
Those are part of Exhibit 3, yes.
Mr. Bass, do you want the protective order to extend to Exhibit 3?
Yes, please.
All right. Finding good cause, the protective order will extend to Exhibit 3 as well. And Ms. Crawford, regarding Exhibit A, the expungement order, do you have any objection to that document being admitted as evidence?
I don't.
All right. Exhibit A will be admitted without objection, and the protective order has now been amended to include Exhibit 3 with my initial. Anything else, Ms. Crawford?
No.
Any other board members have any final questions? In a moment, Mr. Bass, I'll ask whether the matter is submitted. By that, I mean, do you feel satisfied you've had the opportunity to present all evidence and make all argument on your behalf? Ms. Crawford, is the matter submitted?
Yes.
Mr. Bass, is the matter submitted?
Yes, Your Honor.
Matter is submitted, the case is closed, and we are off the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Too. So with that, we are going to move into closed session. So I appreciate everyone's